Chapter 16. Hostile Takeover. The perimeter cameras begin to smoke, their ground wires and circuits melted by intense electrical heat. Storm maintains his palms pressed to the dirt, feeding electricity into the earth. Electrical waves bounce off objects like sonar, allowing him to locate each of the hidden pressure mines. "Follow me," Storm says, sprinting towards the compound. Thin electrical snakes dance with blue light, marking the spots to avoid. The others follow close behind, but two patrolling guards spot the men and rush to position to block them. Brian throws his arms out without breaking stride, knocking both men back with a pulse of energy that slams into their chests. The blast sends the men to the ground and drives the air from their lungs. As the intruders run past, the guards remain gasping for oxygen, writhing in the grass. Commander Hajir stands before the rows of security monitors, studying every detail of the night. His experienced eyes log the number and frequency of each flashing firefly, the amount of flowers growing in the lawn, even the slight left-leaning limp of the stray dog that frequents the dumpster outside the employee dining hall. When the entirety of the camera feeds turn to snow, his mind is already cycling through dozens of scenarios and their proper strategic response. "The perimeter defenses have all gone down," the guard reports, running into the office. "The pressure mines and sub-T turrets are all unresponsive." "Live feeds have crashed as well," Hajir replies, trying to remain calm. "Place all personnel on alert and lock down the facility. No one is to enter or leave this building without being cleared by myself, Mr. Hayanaro, or Mr. Khan. Is that clear?" "Clear, sir." The guard nods, running off. Hajir immediately signals Khan on his emergency response phone. "We have a situation, sir," Hajir says, cold and emotionless. The commander is known for having an unequaled poker face and control of his expressions. "I've moved forward with lockdown protocols. Please do not leave your office for any reason until the emergency has been handled. I will send a detachment to patrol your floor and protect the hallway leading to your office." "Do you know what the situation entails?" "The outer defenses have all gone down. Our cameras, turrets, pressure mines, perimeter patrols, everything black. Activate the crew and move them into position to safeguard the labs. If this is an attack by Hartman or the government, we cannot allow any of our research to be seized." "Clear. Do I have napalm authorization if matters deteriorate further?" Khan pauses before replying with a loud sigh. "Yes, I would rather all of my data be expunged than for it to fall into the wrong hands. I will attempt to avoid that scenario at all costs. Out." Hajir hangs up the receiver and unlocks the weapons locker of his security control outpost. Inside the locker are dozens of rifles, shotguns, grenades, and even an RPG delivery mechanism. Equipping himself with the firepower of a small nation, he exits the office and calls Raven while jogging down the hallway. "What is it?" Raven asks, sounding still half asleep. His body is weakened and recovering from his battle with Yamura. "Suit up and head to the labs. No one is to come or go without authorization. Anyone not authorized is to be shot on sight, without questions asked." He does not wait for a reply. Ending the call and positioning himself in the lobby with a superior vantage point to the main facility entryway, he readies a long-barreled rifle and waits for the intruders to appear. Around the commander, dozens of other guards fall in and take up shooting positions. With the advantage of the biosuit's thermal scanner, Brian avoids the concentration of bodies in the lobby, and instead enters through a side maintenance door. The door is blown off its hinges, and sparks of electricity jump into the nearest of the guards, dropping them to the floor. The other guards open fire, shooting blindly through the doorway. Hajir's index finger twitches, but he holds his own fire, instead waiting for his prey to reveal themselves. Storm dives through the front windows of the lobby and rolls into a group of guards, coming up with a palm heel strike to the chin of one and chopping another in the throat with a knife hand. He pivots, kicking one of the guards into the line of fire as the other quickly make him their primary focus. Ignoring Storm for the moment, Ajir keeps his attention focused on the maintenance door. As Brian makes his turn into the lobby, the commander takes his first shot. Brian is spun around as the bullet hits his visor left of center. Cracks snake through the material and obstruct his view, but the bullet does not penetrate the armor. Ajir takes another shot, this one also failing to break through the superior virtual biosuit. Brian is knocked to the floor by the force of the impact, and scrambles for cover on instinct, despite being immune to the gunfire. The biosuit is constructed of polymers, many times stronger than steel, and yet still flexible and non-restrictive. The commander curses Khan's scientists for making the suit so durable. "Damn it," Ajir growls, tossing his rifle aside as if it were a broken toy and useless to him. "I'll have to rip him out of that suit if I want to kill that brat." He removes his communicator once more. "Mr. Khan, I've engaged the intruders. It appears to be the rude boy and the AWOL operative codenamed Storm." "Kill them," Khan growls. "I don't care how you do it. Just get it done. I want whatever is left of the biosuit back in my possession." Storm kicks a guard in the face and catches his gun, pivoting to use it as a bludgeon across the jaw of another. Bullets whiz around him, but he maintains an electrical field to sense disturbances around him and dodge attacks with ease. Sidestepping gunfire, Storm elbows a guard in the chest and sends him airborne with a rising uppercut to the chin. He dodges 2 more bullets and closes on the shooter, turning the confiscated gun on him at the last second before he is able to fire off his life's last shot. The man's skull is blasted apart and he collapses, fingers still twitching. Storm kicks the body as it falls, tripping up the feet of several more guards as they approach. The guards fall over each other, stumbling over the body of their fallen comrade. Storm rolls over the shoulder of one guard, driving a hard fist into the nose before throat-punching another and grabbing the chin and the top of the head of a third as he rises. Storm's momentum flips the man into the air and spins him violently in a corkscrew until his neck snaps and the body goes limp in his grasp. A path is now cleared into the facility. Storm dashes down the hallway and disappears out of sight. Ajir catches Storm's movement in the corner of his eye and draws 2 pistols before running off in pursuit. Brian emerges from hiding as Ajir runs off. He moves to pursue, but is left with several guards still to contend with. Shooting him in the chest, the nearest guard staggers him back. He shrugs the attack off and punches the man, sending him flying across the room. The guard's back slams into a support beam and his body folds in half over the broken spine. Another guard comes in low and rises, shooting Brian just above the previous damage done by the commander. Again, the attack is unable to penetrate, and Brian hammers a fist down onto the top of the man's skull. The guard is flattened into an impact crater as the floor sinks in several inches and shakes the entire building. A group of 4 guards move in formation, pushing Brian back with constant gunfire. He tries to raise a hand, but his gauntlet is focused on and deflected to the side, preventing from taking a shot at his attackers. The guards work in perfect unison, reloading and alternating so as not to let up their pressure. Brian is taken down to a knee. He feels the impacts against him, and the spreading bruises they spawn beneath his armor. The crack in his visor is spread, and several lines of information below the primary feed are left unreadable. The parasite in Brian's blood stirs, becoming increasingly more active the more the biosuit systems fail, and the dominance over it is lessened. Metabolic energy is mass-produced and directed into Brian's arms, before being released in a single pulse that ripples outward and knocks the remaining guards off their feet. The men writhe on the floor, desperately trying to refill their lungs of the oxygen driven from them. All glass left intact in the lobby is quickly in ruin, and the entryway is cleared of any further obstacles. "All clear," Brian shouts, giving Kochi the signal to enter the building without fear of stray gunfire. "You find Khan. I'll locate Yamura," Kochi says, running for the stairwell, as Brian leaps onto the second-floor balcony and kicks open the door to the adjacent hallway. "Where are you going in such a hurry?" Hajir asks. Storm freezes, recognizing the man from his daily training exercises. He visualizes the path ahead from the memory of his electrical sonar and plots out the best course he can use to put the maximum distance between himself and the commander. Hajir smiles, exerting enough of his aura to let Storm know who has the advantage. Electricity jumps from Storm's fingertips, but he remains motionless. "No one else could figure you out, but I remember who you are. You did well keeping your powers hidden from us and escaping. Though I do imagine you had the assistance of Supervisor Rude and Melendez. Electricity-based powers. That is a very interesting skill set. I do not believe I've ever seen anyone else manifest powers of this type before. I suppose that if eels and catfish can do it, why can't a human?" Storm sends an outpouring of energy through his hands at Hajir, but the commander stands his ground, unimpressed. Electricity sparkles crackle across Hajir's body armor, but leave him undamaged. "You trained for a total of what, 3 or 4 months?" Hajir asks, his own energy now jumping from his body in bright red flashes. "I am a lifelong soldier. From the day I was born, survival has been a continuous endeavor. My senses and body are fine-tuned to a level you could not comprehend after 1,000 years of training." Releasing a fraction of his strength, Hajir knocks Storm against the wall with a pulse of invisible energy. Storm slides down into a crouch, wincing in pain. Besting those weaklings in the crew or that pompous lizard is no accomplishment. I stand above all others in the company by miles. If I wished, I have the power to crush Khan and take over this entire corporation. Springing to his feet, Storm tries to catch Hajir with a kick to the face, but is grabbed by the ankle and pulled into a hard fist. Saliva mixed with blood erupts from his mouth, wetting his mask. He pushes the pain aside, throwing a backhand, but that too is caught up by the more experienced fighter. Hajir locks Storm's other arm under his own and brings his other fist crashing across the teen's jaw. Going limp in the commander's arms, Storm sags and is unable to fight back. Hajir wraps Storm's head in a tight grip and brings his whole body down across his knee. The intended action will result in the breaking of the teen's neck, as Hajir would then push and reverse on impact and bring his knee up as hard as possible. At the last second, Storm is able to avoid this ending, releasing the full force of his electricity into Hajir, flooding him with thousands of watts of voltage. The commander staggers, smoke rolling off his chest. Storm crawls to his feet, staying low and keeping aware of Hajir's movements as he tries to escape. The commander grimaces, isolating the pain and using advanced mental exercises to not become consumed by it. The emergency alarms begin to sound loudly, flooding the halls with strobing red security lights. Someone has either breached the labs or Mr. Khan's floor, Hajir thinks. I can't reach either place while trying to deal with this kid. I have to wrap this up quickly. Hajir's eyes become yellow, and the pupils turn into thin slits. Dozens of emerald scales materialize on his cheeks and forehead. The GX parasite is in full frenzy, attacking his cells in a rage to be fully unleashed. The hallway shakes, and the walls swell outward. Ceiling tiles break apart and drop to the floor. Lights shatter, and a low, grumbling sound vibrates throughout the building. The strongest of all Khan's GX-enhanced warriors is unable to keep the parasite in check and begins transformation. He expands his awareness, searching for his prey. Storm continues to run as fast as he can, taking a corner and heading towards the stairs to the next floor. Run all you want. I will catch up with you eventually, Hajir growls. Yamura paces the observation cell, eyeing Rapture as the mutant stands motionless above him on the walkway. Completely transformed into his reptilian side, Yamura is aware that the visit is not on any official order. Your master will put you to death for doing anything to me, Yamura says, taunting Rapture's lack of independence. Khan thinks he can keep me enslaved, but as soon as I am released, I will rip him open and consume his remains. You will not be released, Rapture hisses, showing an intensity Yamura has not previously noticed in him. Khan is foolish to take this risk. I know how dangerous you are. Then how is it that you say you hope to kill me if I'm so dangerous? Rapture grins, turning several dials to begin pumping a noxious gas into the observation cell. You will become sterilized and no longer stand as a threat to anyone. Dropping to a knee, Yamura clutches his throat. Blood begins to drool from the corners of his mouth and nostrils. Following Raquel's instructions, Kochi navigates the second floor of the Conco Atlanta facility. Having spent much time there, Raquel's memory of the building's layout is absolutely necessary to the group's success. Assuming Yamura to be locked away in the most fortified section of the facility, Raquel directed Kochi to the control room and had given him the instructions for releasing the locks on the observatory. Constructed of a dense plastic compound, stronger than most metals and resistant to the elements, this is the ideal location to hold someone as powerful as Yamura until the bugs can be worked out of his implant. The strength of the room was tested against several fully transformed mutations, which were unable to make a dent in the great domed ceiling, keeping prisoners inside. Locating the control room, Kochi spends a few minutes deciphering which buttons, levers, and dials begin to the operations of each level of the facility. Even after shutting off the power to the observatory to release the room's electronic locks, the system reboots, using a backup generator source. Cursing, Kochi looks around the room for any reference to the location of a backup generator. If he cannot completely cut the power off from the observatory, he will be unable to release Yamura without a set of facility master keys. The senses granted her by Inyana allow Emil to not only sense each of the other beings present in the building, but to also determine which belongs to her target. Following the aura of Deborah Rude, Emil jogs down the halls, evading stray guards here and there. With the commotion of the other intruders, the guards pay little attention to the woman they have already seen in the halls for the past few weeks as Khan's personal guest. She is able to easily slip through the building and go nearly anywhere she wants. Aware that certain details and most of the higher-ranking operatives will be aware of her restrictions, she is careful to avoid drawing too much attention to herself. Once she catches sight of a firefight in the hall outside of a lab. Energy blasts explode into the walls and ceiling, raining debris down. Emil is nearly crushed by the falling tile, but she's able to roll out of the way in time. She is tempted to linger, wanting to see who is powerful enough to cause so much destruction in their battle. She has not recognized the energy of the participants, and this intrigues her all the more. Pushing her curiosity aside, she focuses on the task at hand. She must reach the woman known as Coercion and kill her. Without Coercion around to influence Yamura's actions, he'll be no longer manipulated by Khan and revert back to a state she is confident that she would be able to handle. All of Yamura's fighting abilities and style are ingrained into Emil's memory by Inyana. The Sakari Queen has waited for her revenge for so long. She does not wish for it to be ruined by being unprepared. Emil finally reaches Deborah, who stands alone in a dark lab, monitoring several different situations on her computers. Deborah pays no attention to the sudden visitor. Movement reflects off the computer monitor in front of her, and Deborah turns, firing several quick shots off with her pistol. Emil dodges, diving behind a large metal cabinet. Moving around the length of the lab, Deborah tries to position herself closer to the exit. What do you want, bitch? Sever your mental link to Yamura immediately. How about I summon him here and order him to cut your throat? Deborah spits. Fear is obvious in her voice, and she tries to mask it with her anger and sarcasm. She may be powerful with her mental capabilities, but she still doesn't know exactly how much stronger this liaison to Inyana is than Yamura. Attempt to call for him, and I will use that opportunity to end your life. I do not believe you are powerful enough to maintain dominion over his mind and stop me at the same time. Deborah balls her fist tightly, angered that the woman has called her bluff so early on. It takes every ounce of her will to keep Yamura subdued. Should she try to control Yamura now, she would not be able to break the link and form a new one with Emil quick enough to stop her. She knows that she must leave her options to control the woman free, and to do this she cannot waste her efforts on Yamura. In an instant, the Sakari has been wrenched from her control by circumstances, without ever having to do a thing. Kochi hears movement out in the hallway, and ducks into the back of the control room, hiding behind a large metal cabinet. The GX-enhanced warriors Raven and Darkhold stand just outside the doorway. "No one is in those labs," Raven says into his radio, reporting to Hajir. "Do you want us to remain posted up on this floor or find some of the action?" "Stay put for now. We still do not know where our intruders are headed. We cannot leave any of the labs unprotected just in case," Hajir orders. With the men distracted, Kochi manages to slip into the back of the control room, sneaking into a maintenance closet and climbing up the shelving in order to reach the ceiling tiles. Crawling through the ceiling carefully, the man tries to guess which way will allow him to bypass the two mutants. When Kochi thinks he has cleared the guards, he takes a peek out of the ceiling, before dropping back down into the hallway several intersections past the control room. Consulting a facility directory he manages to swipe from the control room, he heads towards the backup generator as quickly as his feet can carry him. Rapture is filled with a sense of accomplishment as he watches Yamura slowly choke on the noxious fumes being pumped into the observatory. He had assumed that it would be shame he would feel for killing the Sakari in such a manner, but now as he witnesses the end of Yamura, he doesn't care how it was brought about. All of your power and abilities, and yet there is nothing you can do to save yourself. Yamura's thoughts slow, and a thick fog begins to overtake his mind. The poisonous gas seeps into every pore, smothering what little oxygen remains. Abruptly, the gas ceases, and begins to ventilate naturally. Rapture's eyes widen in disbelief, and he screams enraged at the top of his lungs. Someone has taken control of the observatory's operation systems. He curses Emil for betraying him, not knowing that it was actually Coach E who has shut down the backup generator. Rapture sees that for him there is no turning back. Khan will learn of his betrayal in time. The only thing left for him to do is kill Yamura with his own hands. Focusing his strength into a single punch, Rapture targets the single weak point of the observatory, ripping through the previously electrified door. Yamura leaps out of the room with haste, not wanting to be trapped inside, should a battle with the reptilian occur. Rapture's size and strength make him an opponent that he does not wish to battle in an enclosed area. "You risk your master's wrath by releasing me," Yamura says, the two warriors circling each other hungrily. "He isn't my master. He is my employer. I see no difference. Khan gives the orders and you must follow them. If I were not about to kill you myself, Khan surely would. Khan is but a man. He cannot touch me." Yamura laughs, knowing Rapture is posturing. In reality, all of the employees of Conco fear the man and his power, even if he doesn't possess any of their enhanced abilities. The power of Khan's position and his ruthlessness is enough justification for obedience. At Yamura's disrespect, Rapture launches his attack. The mutant slashes quickly with his claws, left, right, left, right, left, right. He swings in a relentless fury, pushing the Sakari back against the railing of the observatory. As Yamura's back touches the railing and he can retreat no further, Rapture's tail darts overhead and crushes the railing less than an inch from Yamura's face as he drops his level at the last second. Yamura thrusts himself forward, diving between his foe's legs and pivoting up to his feet as he manifests and then instantly condenses his energy into a black sword. Yamura comes down at the base of Rapture's upturned tail with an elbow, speeding back and catching him in the chest. Coughing on impact, Yamura expels his burning lungs of air and is sent sailing back across the observation deck. Throwing his weight backwards, Yamura flips several times until he is able to slow himself and avoid crashing into the far wall. Dropping into a crouch, Ymura springs at Rapture again, still holding his energy blade. Rapture turns, swatting at Ymura with his massive tail. Ymura adjusts his trajectory, sidestepping without slowing. An opening now given, Ymura stabs at Rapture's overextended body. Rapture turns slightly, allowing Ymura's stab to come directly at his center, where he catches his wrist. Rapture pulls Ymura's arm without making him step off balance and connects with a hard fist from his other side. Ymura stumbles, blood exploding from his lips. Thick droplets of crimson splash to the floor, and the former Sakari general roars, jumping up and wrapping his legs around Rapture's arm, and twisting until he is able to pull his larger opponent down into a painful armbar hold. Pain flares through Rapture as he feels his bones being folded and his muscles tearing. Rapture's tail swats Ymura across the face, breaking his hold and rolling him along the floor several feet. Both fighters circle, glaring at each other, but neither breaking their intense concentration. Ymura's energy blade lies beside Rapture's feet, dissolving into black steam. Ymura draws in his mind the elemental symbols for fire and spirit, manipulating them into his desired attack mentally, before throwing his arms together and breathing the command word. Black flames wrap around Ymura's arms as he pulls his mystical energy into the spell and releases both in one spectacular flame. Basa ia aginestra, Ymura shouts, combusting black flames all across Rapture's front. The mutant howls as his scales blacken and crumble to ash. Rapture swats at the flames with his hands, but only succeeds in spreading them to his arms. The GX parasite in Rapture's bloodstream goes wild as pain becomes all the warrior knows. He loses all sense of the battle and in panic begins to thrash about, spreading the flames across the observatory. Black flame eats away at the ground and the deck becomes unstable, shaking violently as each support system is burnt to ash. Metabolizing energy at a furious pace, the parasite takes control of Rapture's body and releases it all in one single pulse. Rapture's energy explodes out, extinguishing the flames and knocking Ymura to his back. Rapture drops to his hands and knees, his body completely blackened. "Damn you," Rapture coughs, his voice reverting back to that of Shesha. His eyes transform from yellow and slitted to brown and oval. As Rapture becomes human once more, the bulk of the magical fire's damage also fades. Red burns similar to a bad sunburn cover Shesha's body, and he shakily stands. "Damn you!" Ymura holds his left arm out, visualizing the symbols for fire and spirit once more. This time, there will be no rematch. Ymura utters the command word, and Shesha becomes a screaming ball of fire, running blindly across the observation deck until the final support gives out and the deck drops down into the darkness below. Ymura leaps from the falling observation deck and into the hallway. The still screaming Shesha plummets with the deck until he can no longer be heard. Ymura relaxes, calming his breathing and relinquishing control to Jake in order to conserve his energy for any future threats they may encounter while escaping the facility. "Do not take another step," Coercion yells, holding her arms out in front of her. The parasite within her blood compels obedience, as it is the nature of her power. Emil takes another step forward, her entire body shaking, as she fights against the orders commanding her on a cellular level. Blood runs down her nostrils and upper lip. The salty, metallic taste goes unnoticed, as every fiber of her being is focused on resistance. How is this woman able to override my control? I can control Ymura, and he is a full Sakari. This woman is but a shadow of full possession, and Yana cannot truly be that powerful, can she? Coercion continues to exert her dominion. The liaison slowly inches forward. Coercion notices the silver flash of metal at the woman's hip, and her eyes widen in horror as a shaking hand draws out a small handgun. Fear causes her concentration to slip. Broken free of control, the liaison raises the gun and flips off the safety before Coercion is able to regain some semblance of dominion once more. "You cannot be allowed to keep Ymura here," Emil says through gritted teeth. "He's too dangerous to control and must be executed." This is all about Ymura? And Yana must really hate her brother to go through so much effort to ensure his death. The hammer cocks on the gun and Coercion pushes all of her other thoughts aside. Every distraction allows the liaison to resist her influence that much more. Her eyes become yellow, with slender reptilian slits for pupils, and dark scales begin to manifest across her skin. The GX parasite kicks into full gear, fueling Coercion's ability with all of its power. Emile's hand is slowly lowered to her side, as the full power of the parasite is too much for her to resist. The woman fights with all she has in her, struggling against Coercion's mental orders. Blood now runs from her eyes and ears. Her brain begins to suffer severe trauma due to the ongoing mental tug of war. Coercion licks her lips, tasting her own blood as she realizes that she too has begun to bleed from the eyes, ears, and nose. The liaison fights back with another distraction, raising her gun just enough to squeeze off a shot, before Coercion's full attention is regained and her arm is snapped back to the side. Pain blossoms out, and Coercion loses all sense of control. The bullet is torn through her left thigh, and she drops to her right side in a heap. The visible signs of an activated parasite vanish, and a scared and hurt woman whose face is covered with blood is all that remains. Deborah Root holds her hands against the wound, applying pressure to slow the bleeding. Inyana's liaison raises her gun again, fixing the sights on Deborah's forehead. You are an arrogant and prideful fool to believe yourself more powerful than a Sakari. Deborah awaits the end. She has accepted it. How many lives has she destroyed with her experiments? How many lives has she taken herself through forced suicides via her powers of control? Her own husband died because she ordered it. Her only son was subjugated to torture as the parasite was forced on him. She knows she should feel guilt, but she doesn't. Her regrets are not her past actions, but rather that she cannot live to see what else she could accomplish with the GX parasite if given more time. Perhaps she lacks a soul if such things exist. Deborah has never been religious or believed in any power beyond which she could explain naturally. Even the magic of the Sakari and the Yazata must operate on some law that she just simply does not know or understand the principles to. The air around her heats up and she closes her eyes, expecting it all to be over in just another heartbeat. Blood splashes onto Deborah, followed by chunks of wet flesh. She blinks, looking up to see the liaison, just as the woman falls. A look of surprised horror is frozen on Emile's face. Smoke rolls off the side of the liaison's head and upper torso, as much of it has been blown off by some unseen explosion. Deborah's son stands in the doorway with his arm outstretched, and the virtual gauntlet still smoking. Deborah is stunned and unable to comprehend the situation. At the moment of her guaranteed death, the son she betrayed stepped in from nowhere to save her life. "Son?" she whispers. "You have no right to say that to me anymore, not after what you've done," he replies coldly. Deborah nods, understanding. He has every logical right to hate her. She even envies his ability to express such a strong emotion. All she wonders is why he has come. "I didn't come here to save you." Brian's face cannot be seen, but the disgust is obvious in his voice. "Whatever she wanted to kill you for was probably justified. And yet you killed her despite her possibly being an ally against Khan. You just couldn't let anyone hurt your dear mother, could you?" She smiles through her blood-stained teeth. "Don't even pretend that you understand. You don't care about anyone or anything other than your twisted science experiments. You murdered my father, your own husband. You murdered him because you knew what you were doing was wrong, and he was trying to rectify his mistakes. You're a greater monster than the parasite could ever make you become." Deborah's eyes flash yellow, and she expands her awareness to reach into the mind of her son as he talks. A flash of electricity surges through Brian, breaking Coercion's connection with him. Brian turns to see Storm standing in the doorway. "Don't let your guard down. She's one of Khan's most deadly weapons," Storm says, standing beside Brian. "I know," he whispers. "She made me." Coercion connects her awareness to Storm, but finds that his mind is a blackness she cannot penetrate. "Special lead aluminum alloy. You won't be getting into my head, lady." Storm holds his index finger out, sending a jolt of electricity into Coercion's open mind and knocking her back against a wall, where she slumps to the floor unconscious, drilling blood and saliva. Storm debates finishing her off, but can already hear the sadness and torment in Brian's voice. How hypocritical would he be to execute Brian's mother when his entire rebellion has been to rescue his own brother, who remains in Khan's manipulations? This'll end when we finish Khan. None of these soldiers can run his empire. It'll collapse with infighting, and they'll no longer be a threat to us. They'll always be a threat as long as they hold the same ideals. Each one of them has to be eliminated, no matter how difficult the decision is. I know this. I knew it when Yumura was about to kill that boy, Peril. I knew he was right, but a part of me just couldn't accept it. I still can't. We're humans. We shouldn't be as ruthless as a Sakari warrior. We have emotions and a conscience that we can't just shut off at will. Letting any of them live will only come back to haunt us. I know it will. Storm puts a hand on Brian's shoulder. Despite being younger, his taller frame and greater maturity is comforting to him, and he nods in acceptance. The two teenagers run further into the facility towards the emergency stairs, heading to face Antonio Khan himself. The lights shut off and Khan's security monitors turn black. "What the hell is going on out there?" Khan growls. He turns to Hayanaro, expecting his aide to provide an adequate explanation. "The power's gone out." "I can bloody well see that. I mean, why the fuck has it gone out, and why the fuck hasn't anyone brought it back online?" Hayanaro is speechless for a moment, not wanting to say the wrong thing and further anger his superior. He then remembers that radios run off battery. "Commander Hajir, whatever your location is, please break off and restore the facility power. It is imperative that our systems are brought back online. Without power, many of our experiments in the labs will be ruined." "Copy. Heading to the generator now. Out." Khan impatiently taps his fingers on the table, awaiting the next round of incompetence he will be forced to bear witness to. Jake leans against the wall, breathing heavily. As his black hair falls back into place and loses its sheen, he realizes that prolonged rest is urgent. "Try not to engage yourself in any more battles. I must recover my strength," Yumura says, fading into full dormancy. Back in full control, Jake jogs out of the observatory and pauses at the first intersection. He closes his eyes, trying to focus on the auras he can sense down each path. The left passage contains 3 strong powers, while the right contains dozens of smaller auras, gathered in formations. Assuming the enhanced defensive grouping is to protect Khan, Jake chooses the right hallway to continue down. Much sooner than expected, Jake encounters his first grouping of guards, staged at the security checkpoint. The hallway is blocked by a booth and a metal detector only wide enough for a single man to pass through at a time. 8 security operatives are formed up in front of the checkpoint, with 4 standing and 4 kneeling. All of the men have rifles drawn and are ready for any intrusion. As Jake approaches, he's immediately met with gunfire and forced to dive back and out of the way. Bullets shred the hallway and Jake covers his head as he crawls back around the corner to safety. "This isn't gonna work," Jake thinks in frustration. "With them organized at that choke point, I can't get around them. That hallway is like their Thermopylae." When Yumura does not respond to Jake's observations, his confidence plunges even further. "Damn it. I was hoping I could get him to let that black flame thing loose on them and clear me a path." The sound of boots catches Jake's attention, progressively becoming louder. He judges from the sounds that 4 of the guards have broken off in pursuit. Rather than maintaining their superior position, the security operatives break formation to hunt Jake down and hopefully finish him off. The first guard rounds the corner, sweeping his rifle in precaution side to side. Jake waits until the 4th man rounds the corner before he drops down from the ceiling behind them. The rear guards are rendered unconscious before any of the others can turn, with knife-hand chops to the back of their necks. The other guards move to attack, but Jake sweeps in low and close, blocking the nearest guard's gun arm outwards and delivering a hammer fist to the center of his chest. Jake pivots, hooking his leg around the back of the final guard's neck and whipping him face first into the wall with a roundhouse kick. Jake looks down, feeling something roll up against his foot. Smiling devilishly, the teenager reaches down to pick up the grenade. Power restored, Khan watches his security feeds with anger and disbelief as his facility is reduced to chaos. One by one, his forces are brought down by 3 teenage boys. He hurls his drink glass against the far wall, shattering it and splashing brandy across the room. The final checkpoint on his floor explodes with a brilliant flash. Bodies are strewn in every direction. Operatives left alive crawl in confusion and agony, oblivious to the attacker that runs past them. "Why the hell is the Sakari running loose?" Khan growls. "It was my explicit instructions to leave him contained until the issue of his rebellious nature was dealt with." The operatives posted at the liaison's door have failed to report in, as have all those along the route to the observatory, Hayanaro explains. "It is probable that she has somehow loosed this beast on us in order to teach us a lesson." Grinding his teeth together in anger, Khan curses loudly several times. "Who is still active out there? I need an operative to hunt down and kill that bitch." Hayanaro checks several frequencies on his master switchboard and makes a few contacts briefly. "Commander Hajir is en route to our location to intercept Yamura. Raven and Darkhold are on the second floor and report that they have not seen any action yet. Send those two idiots after Emil and have them bring me her pretty little head." Nodding, Hayanaro runs back to the controls. A blackness so dark and thick that nothing can penetrate it smothers the stairwell and blocks any further progress into the facility. Brian stumbles, barely able to come to a stop before running headlong into the abyss. "This is as far as the two of you proceed," Raven says from behind. Without a healing factor as advanced as Rapture's or the magical skills of Seal Asilair or Dukan Helez, Raven still displays the signs of injury and fatigue from his battles in Clavemont. "Raven is the leader of the crew, but in his current condition we should be able to take him if we work together," Storm whispers. Brian studies his opponents before responding. "Where does that leave the other guy? I doubt he's going to stand by while we double-team his friend." Camaraderie doesn't run high within Khan's ranks. There's a lot of infighting and positioning rivalry. Most of his forces will try to fight alone out of pride if possible. Darkhold expands his awareness, grinning as he peers into Storm's heart. "Wow, you really hate us a lot," he laughs. "I rarely see disdain levels this high." Looking a moment for the cause, he finally nods. "We killed your mom, huh? Tough break." Storm balls his fists and tenses, giving in to his anger and hate. Merely closing his own hand into a fist, Darkhold is able to drive Storm to a knee in agony. Brian recalls the mutant's ability being used against him the night he was abducted. At the time, it was his hatred for Butch Harper that caused him pain. "I'll finish this one off. You kill the prodigal son so we can give Khan his damn biosuit back. Then maybe he'll get off our asses for a while," Darkhold says, keeping Storm paralyzed with pain. Raven nods, reaching into the darkness. Shadow puppetry. Shadow python. An enormous black serpent is pulled from the abyss. Coiled, this creature blocks the width of the hallway and nearly touches the ceiling with its mass. Brian stares into the darkness, filled with fear as the jaws of the shadow beast close in on him. An explosion breaks Jake's stride, causing him to be thrown against a wall and into the office of some kind. A table breaks the teen's fall and he groans as he crawls to his feet. A large figure blocks his exit, standing in the hole. "We have not yet had the pleasure of meeting face to face before," the man says, sliding a combat knife into his hand. Blood and scorch marks cover his body, and it is obvious that he has already been in another battle. Commander Hajir's chest heaves and he fights to stay conscious. A lesser man would have already passed out from his injuries, but by him being wounded rather than finished off, he intends to make the intruders pay for their mistake. Hajir's chest expands and his muscles swell suddenly. The GX parasite goes berserk, filling every cell with increased metabolic energy. "I apologize, but I do not have the strength remaining to waste in a prolonged battle." "He is going to go all out from the start. Be prepared to defend," Yamura orders. Jake kicks the remains of the table in front of him towards Hajir as the man rushes with a swipe of his knife. The commander's body breaks through the table as if it were tissue paper, and Jake is barely able to evade in time as the large man's arm comes horizontally at his throat with the blade. "Do not merely back away, form a counterattack." "Stop backseat driving," Jake screams. twisting out of the path of another knife swing. His shoulder bumps into the wall, leaving him with no room left to evade. Jake drops low and makes a dash past Tajir, ducking beneath his recoiling attack. "Perhaps you are too winded from previous engagements," Tajir says thoughtfully, "but it appears that you're not nearly as fearsome as I've been led to believe." Focusing his aura into his hands, Jake channels it into a shining blue orb. Using his will, he compresses the energy and molds it into a condensed spiritual blade. Gripping his energy weapon, he stands ready for the commander's next assault. Tajir grins, rarely having battled anyone with the ability to manifest, yet alone condense their spiritual power. Leaping at Jake, Tajir brings his knife down in a vertical slash. Using his energy blade, Jake is able to block the strike, but the force behind the blow knocks him to his back. Tajir presses his advantage, coming down to impale the teen, but Jake kicks his shin, stumbling Tajir enough for him to thrust his own weapon through his opponent's thigh. Tajir leaps back, holding his palm flat against his injured leg. Jake slowly stands, eyes set in hard determination. Having faced hundreds of opponents, Tajir steps into each confrontation, fearless and confident of his victory. While looking into Jake's eyes, for the first time he briefly doubts his own assured success. Tajir rushes, with several fast slashes, but Jake is able to parry each with equivalent speed and force. Looking down, Tajir watches as several shallow cuts open up on his arms and chest. Thin lines of fresh blood materialize, and he growls in anger. "This is going on much longer than I expected. I have to end this fight immediately." Tajir's body becomes enveloped in a swirling vortex of energy. Jake shields his face, backing away as the winds lash out at him. Tajir's body again increases in size and muscle mass, dark scales materializing across his skin and covering all of his previous wounds. Rejuvenated, he laughs with a howl of adrenaline-filled excitement. 2 extra arms rip free from Tajir's sides, and thick reptilian tail emerges from his back. The office around him disintegrates, burning through the floor and ceiling. Jake dives back into the hall just as Tajir's aura expands outwards in a violent cyclone. Energy blades condense in each of the warrior's hands, and he grins, revealing 2 sets of razor-sharp teeth and an elongated jaw. Jake's thoughts instinctively drop him into a protective fighting stance, but the commander moves so quickly that he moves through the teen's defenses in an instant. Jake falls back, unsure what just happened. A bloody X is carved into his chest from the intersection of Tajir's 4 sword arms. Brian's boots click against the ceiling as he leaps up into the flip, dodging a strike from the shadowy serpent. Pushing off, he darts past the python and lands beside Raven, erecting a protective wall of darkness. Raven shields himself from Brian as the teen pivots with a 2-handed pulse blast. Raven travels through the shadows, maneuvering himself away from Brian. Smoke rolls off the mutant's arms, and he is surprised to see that a portion of the blast was able to penetrate even his shadows, pulling his energy into his feet for speed. Brian pushes his opponent with a flurry of fast punches and kicks. Raven raises a wall of darkness to meet each impact, but grows more concerned as the blows continue to push him back with their sheer force. The shadow python attacks suddenly, but Brian catches it by the jaws and rips the creature in half. Black shimmers of energy rain down following the shadow beast's defeat. Raven screams, the recoil of his puppet being destroyed reflected back upon him. "Damn it!" Raven curses, wiping a stream of crimson from his nostrils with the back of his hand. "You're tough." Ignoring Raven's compliment, Brian rushes with a hard right hook. The blow spins the leader of the crew around, and Brian snaps a furious sidekick into his exposed back. Raven screams, feeling his body lit up with white-hot pain. The mutant crashes through the wall, his shadows dispersing. Darkhold's attention wanes, seeing his ally taken out of the fight. With a small window of distraction, Storm floods him with all of his electrical energy, focused into a single, directed current. "Thanks," Storm says, stepping over the still sparkling body of Darkhold. "I guess I underestimated them as a team." Calming himself and pushing his own agitated parasite into remission, he shrugs. "It's all right as long as they're down and we're still moving. Do you have any idea who we may still have to get past before reaching Khan?" It's hard to say. Rapture should be around here, but I would have thought we'd run into him by now. Maybe he's personally protecting Khan on his private floor. Hajir and Coercion were Khan's two strongest, so with them behind us, we shouldn't have any more problems reaching him. Knife hand chop connects with the back of Brian's neck, dropping him to the floor in a heap. Who was the strongest, you said? Beryl asks. I don't recall hearing my name mentioned anywhere. Storm freezes in horror, unable to move. Brother? Jake's body feels as though it's in free fall. A smothering darkness surrounds him, and he can no longer see the battle. Images of his loved ones flicker before him, welcoming him home. He no longer feels pain or sadness. Not even his hatred or fear of Ymura can trouble him anymore. Ymura, the Sakari's scowling visage, becomes prominent in the teen's thoughts. You weakling, Ymura growls. How dare you allow him to kill you? Have you not learned of pride in our time together? Can I not rest for 5 minutes without having to step in and handle matters that you should be equipped to attend to? Jake feels himself being pulled up from the abyss. His family shouts up at him, begging him not to leave, but he's helpless to resist. Pathetic, Ymura's words are the last thing that Jake hears before being abruptly snapped back into consciousness. The blood pouring from Jake's chest wound begins to boil, slowly transforming into a black oil that stops the bleeding and seals the cuts closed. Waves of heat ripple from the teen's body, casting a dizzy effect on Hajir's eyes. The commander blinks several times, trying to clear his vision. He wipes the mounting beads of sweat from his forehead. A Sakari tattoo dissolves from Jake's shoulder, fizzling into the aura of black energy that rises from his body. Ymura stands, black flames radiating out from his body. Rather than the tips of his hair being oily and black, his entire hair stands on end, a deep shade of darkness. Eyes glowing red. The former general grins, baring his elongated fangs. Your full power against mine, Ymura says. No more childish games of evasion. We end this battle as two proud warriors. Hajir smiles, focusing his breathing and bending his knees. The two run at each other and engage in a vicious struggle of claws and blade. Blood sprays in every direction, but neither fighter slows. Cuts splatter open across cheek and chest, arm and thigh. The floor grows wet with thick grime. Both fighters fight against their own bodies to remain upright. An arm is cleaved from Hajir, the limb tossed into the air. The commander continues to duck and weave, slash and thrust, ignoring his injury. Ymura winces, nearly losing his right eye as a blade rakes across his face. The Sakari counters, tearing open Hajir's torso. Hajir is sure he feels his organs sliding out, but he continues to fight on. The man that gives up first is the man who will accept his failure and die. Ymura is pushed back, his next slash blocked. Not even Ymura has the strength remaining to recover fast enough to dodge. Rather than deliver a final blow, Hajir steps in for the kill but becomes lightheaded. The scales covering the man's body flake away and the floor quickly rushes up to greet him. Face pressed into the grime of their injuries, Hajir realizes that he has come up short in this final contest. I almost had you, Hajir coughs, unable to lift his head. Standing over the defeated commander, Ymura extends his claws. There is victory, and there is defeat. In battle, there is no such thing as almost. Carry this lesson forward with you into hell. Storm is racked by indecision. He debates whether he should reveal himself to Peril, in hopes that his brother still remembers him, or if he should play it safe and again avoid a possible confrontation. Looking down at Brian's motionless form, the guilt mounting within him makes his decision. Unable to turn his back on his allies again, Storm stands ready to confront his fears and take back his life. Thomas, you don't have to continue this. Khan has just been using you, Storm says, holding his hands out in front of him in a gesture of peace. To him, we're nothing but disposable assets. That man toys with people's lives as if they had no meaning. Shut up. Stop trying to confuse me. You're my enemy. I'm not going to trust anything you say. I'm the only person that really knows you, Thomas. Do you remember anything before Khan and his men took us away? The GX parasite within Peril has carefully kept the boy's memories hidden, allowing for a much easier to control host. Without something to fight for, a person submits readily to subjugation. Peril pushes Storm back with a psychic pulse blast, but the attack has little effect due to the special lining of Storm's helmet. Khan doesn't care about you. If he has to choose between you and whatever task he has set for you, he won't hesitate to sacrifice you. You're just a pawn to him. Shut up! Screams, his head pained by inner turmoil. The boy desperately tries to remember life before the parasite, but cannot. I'm the strongest. They need me. They only need you until you're less valuable to them than something or someone else they want. They nearly threw everything away to get him, Storm says, pointing down to Brian, who begins to stir. But see how quickly they worked to remove him when he didn't fit into their plans. Stop trying to trick me, Peril screams, his psychic energy swelling out as he attempts to silence Storm with his powerful psychic call technique. Storm skids backwards a few inches, but is able to quickly shake off the attack. Thomas, listen to me, he says, removing his helmet and leaving himself vulnerable to Peril's dangerous abilities. It's me, Richard, your brother. Don't you remember me? Seeing Rick's face, Peril's mind is able to recall a single memory of the two boys playing on a tire swing. They're laughing and happy. Screaming, Peril turns and dashes down the hallway before disappearing further into the facility. Go after him, Brian says, having stood up. He rubs his sore neck with one hand. Family is all we have in this world. Don't let Khan take yours away from you like he did so many others. But you're hurt, Storm argues, torn between loyalty to his allies and loyalty to his own blood. We may still have to get through Rapture or the rest of the crew before ever reaching Khan himself. I'll deal with that. You did your part, now go, I got this. When this is over, I swear that I'll come back to help you find the rest of the town. Brian nods, accepting his promise. In seconds, Storm is gone, and he's left alone to face whatever nightmares Khan has left in store for him in his house of horrors. Making his way to the stairs with little resistance, Brian arrives on the executive floor, which houses only an elevator with access to Khan's private level. Stepping into the hallway, his path is immediately blocked by a rather large and imposing GX-enhanced warrior. You're trespassing. I will not allow you to progress any further, growls a large voice as it approaches from the shadows. A behemoth of a man, standing well over 7 feet tall and weighing 300 to 400 pounds, steps out from the darkness. He wears a simple black mask over his round head. His codename is Crusher. Oh geez, this guy's a freaking semi. The man walks towards Brian, who shakily stands his ground. I don't think my armor can withstand a punch from this guy. I have to stay on my feet and not let him make any contact. This is your one chance to turn around and leave with your life, Crusher says. Well, being a hero doesn't go hand in hand with thinking. Brian runs at the man and leaps into him with a kick to the side of the head. The teen leaps away in horror as the kick has no effect. Undeterred, he runs at Crusher but slides underneath him as the man swings. Brian throws his arms up and unleashes a huge wave of energy into Crusher's exposed back. Crusher turns around, the energy having no effect. Crusher's fist smashes into the floor and removes a huge chunk of it. Lifting the ground over his head, he walks towards Brian. The teen looks away, shielding his face, when suddenly Crusher screams. Brian looks up to see a red line of blood streak across Crusher's arms. Crusher's arms fall to the side, and the floor falls on top of the man, crushing him. Blood oozes from underneath the rubble. Brian sees Yamura land in a crouched position, his claws covered in blood. The look in Yamura's eyes sends a primal fear racing through Brian. He doesn't see the Sakari as a potential ally or someone to aid him. He only sees the former general as a deadly beast, ready to attack. Clambering to his feet, Brian dashes for the elevator and hits the up button. Yamura runs towards him, growling. The door opens and Brian dives in, hitting the close door button without a second to spare. Yamura reaches the elevator just as the door closes. Brian sighs with relief as the elevator ascends. He hopes that the hardest battles now lie behind him, and all that lies ahead is a final confrontation with Antonio Khan. The door opens and immediately gunfire fills the interior of the elevator. Brian ducks to the side, a bullet ripping through an exposed portion of his shoulder, that red splatter. Damn it, all the fighting has this suit in shreds. It isn't protecting me much now. Brian charges up a ball of energy in his hand and throws it down the hall, knocking the guards back. Leaping out of the elevator, he dashes down the hallway. I don't know where I'm going. What floor Khan's office is even on? I should have stayed in the elevator. Suddenly, Yamura rips through the floor of the elevator and leaps into the hall. Scratch that, good thing I got out of the elevator. Yamura slashes through the guards as he runs towards Brian. Blood paints the walls and drenches the floor. Brian passes a directory and reads it quickly as he runs past, trying to make sure that he doesn't stray too far from his goal of locating Khan's office. He sees another elevator up ahead, but Yamura leaps through the wall ahead of him, cutting off his path. You will not get away from me again, growls Yamura, extending his claws. Kill him, the voice of Antonio Khan demands. Every fiber of Yamura's body is compelled to obey. No! No more killing! He's using us! Jake's voice cuts into his thoughts. Yamura screams, clawing at his head. What's going on? Wonders Brian. Yamura digs his fingernails into his scalp. Blood drips to the floor. Seizing upon the distraction, Brian runs past Yamura and into the elevator, leaving behind the crazed Sakari. The elevator automatically stops on the 26th floor, and Brian steps out as the lights begin to flicker. Khan must know I'm here. This must be a trap. But why take me to this particular floor? A figure steps from around the corner, its body contorted and twisted into that of a giant spider. Brian looks on and then gasps in horror as he recognizes the creature's face. Lucy? Whispers Brian, sadness and anger swelling inside of him at the sight of his only friend from school being transformed into a hideous beast. That bastard. He made her into a monster. The Lucy creature moves towards Brian, swinging with several of its arms. Brian dodges and punches at her face. The creature deflects his attacks with one of her legs and shoves another through his shoulder and flings him against the wall. Brian falls to the ground. If I want Khan, I can't get any more injuries. He's bound to have his best guards protecting him on this floor. I'm sorry, Lucy, but I have to get past you. Brian runs at the Lucy creature and screams, punching his fist through her chest. The creature howls and drops, curling up. Blood pours from the wound as Brian retracts his fist. Lucy, I'm so sorry. I promise I'll make him pay for what he's done. Yamura leaps through the floor, blood running down from the sides of his head. He leaps at Brian, but is tackled by the Lucy creature. Run! Hisses the monster. Lucy? Run! Howls the Lucy monster, swatting at her classmate with a free arm. Pained at his loss, but touched by her final gesture, he does as she orders. Yamura grabs the creature by the throat and rips it out. Blood sprays everywhere as the creature twitches in his grasp. He tosses it aside and glances around for his prey. Brian ducks back into the elevator and continues his journey upward, trying to escape a confrontation with Yamura, but also to hide his anguish at seeing the death of his former friend. He knew she was no match. He's toying with me, trying to piss me off. Damn it if it isn't working. I can't believe him. How could he do that to her? Brian stops at the 59th floor and runs out of the elevator, rolling into a side hall as dozens of guards open fire. Yamura leaps through the floor of the elevator and is hit by several bullets. Yamura screams in anger and pain. He runs at the guards, ripping through them, tearing them to pieces. Brian looks around the corner to see Yamura holding his side, blood dripping steadily to the floor. He's been shot, so I might be able to take him now, Brian thinks, trying to boost his own confidence. As Brian steps into the hallway, Yamura turns, covered in blood. Saliva and blood hang from his gaping mouth. Obviously in pain, the Sicarii resembles a badly wounded and frightened animal, the most dangerous kind. "How is the situation?" asks Khan. "Our last report showed that the boy had reached this floor. We lost transmission from the teams after they opened fire on Yamura," says Hayanaro. Suddenly the door is burst open by Brian's body as he's thrown into the room. Yamura steps through, snarling like a crazed beast. "Finish him, Yamura," orders Khan. He is surprised to see that after all the commotion, that Yamura has remained under the influence of the implant. Yamura leaps into the air but passes over Brian, landing on Khan's desk. "What?" Khan shouts in surprise. Khan reaches for his gun, but Yamura slashes horizontally, slitting the man's throat. Blood sprays into the air as he falls back, out of his chair and to the floor. "No human controls me," growls Yamura, dropping the blood-covered microchip to the desk. Hayanaro pulls out a micro-Uzi and opens fire, hitting Yamura in the shoulder with 2 shots. The bullets pepper the room and tear it to shreds. Yamura dives for cover, leaving behind a trail of blood. Brian stands up in time just to see Hayanaro dragging Khan into a secret elevator. "Khan!" screams Brian, running towards them but unable to reach the door in time. He curses loudly, banging his fists against the door. The building suddenly shakes with a series of small explosions, destroying this place and all the evidence of his evil. "We need to get the hell out of here," Brian says to himself, before the realization coming upon him that he too needs to evacuate. Yamura runs toward the stairs, but blood loss forces him to switch control back over to Jake so he can recover. Jake drops to his knees after the switch, feeling the pain of the gunshots. "Warn me next time, you son of a bitch!" Jake screams at Yamura, nearly in tears. "I cannot continue. I must gather back my strength." With that, Yamura's spiritual avatar fades. Jake fights to stand back up and drag his body towards the staircase. Racked with pain from their previous battles, he struggles to continue. The motivation that drives him forward is that at the end of this path, a possible end to his entire nightmare awaits. Not looking back, Brian disappears ahead of him and leaves the wounded teen to find the will to carry on. The hallway is suddenly blocked by ridiculously lengthened claws, stabbing into the wall in front of him. The claws stretch across the entire hall and prevent any escape. "Today is my lucky day. Khan had sent me out to speak with a few people, and because I took my time and came back late, I get to play with the mighty demon boy I've heard so much about," the man says, the one known at the Rockland facility as the Chicago representative. The representative retracts his claws and continues to smile. "I wouldn't be so happy. I just killed your boss. This entire building is about to burn down," Jake says. "You killed Khan?" The representative repeats in disbelief. He closes his eyes for a moment before reopening them. "Unbelievable. It's true, I do not sense Khan's spirit anywhere. Get out of the way or we're both going to burn alive." With Peril and Rapture defeated and Khan dead, Hayanaro will be in charge. That will place one of those bitch supervisors or Commander Hajir as the new lieutenant. "I think that killing you will put me in their good graces for a promotion," the representative grins. Jake lowers into a light fighting stance, ready to utilize his full speed at a moment's notice. The representative whips his arm to the side and extends his claws, creating a chest-level guillotine. Jake backflips over the attack, his feet touch the wall, and he pushes off into a front flip over the return pass of the claws. The representative throws his other arm out, extending that hand's claws. Jake dives to the side as the claws pierce the wall behind him. The representative brings his other arm around and delivers a slash diagonally at Jake's lowered position. Jake rolls out of the way and continues a dangerous dance of evasion. Your reflexes are very good. I wonder, though, how is your endurance? The representative asks mockingly. He's just another of Khan's enhanced thugs. I can beat him, Jake assures himself, trying to remain focused. He's holding back. Do not believe that he's any common brute. This man is likely one of Khan's top soldiers, on the same level as Rapture or Peril, Imura says, disagreeing with Jake's initial assessment. Imura's observations are much closer to the truth. The man acting as Khan's representative from the Chicago headquarters to the other branches is one of the GX program's older successes. The Chicago office is Khan's second largest after the Atlanta one, and is ran by 3 of the company's longest tenured employees, Dr. Horatio Thornston, Dr. Robert Birch, Dr. Trevor Castile. The representative was another high-ranked member of the Special Operations Force, just like Rapture. While Khan normally kept the Atlanta office as his command center, the events in Clavemont forced him to retreat to Chicago and take over command there. Mr. Khan has far too much invested in Project VR and the townspeople of Clavemont for me to let you live and screw it all up, the representative declares. Khan was a heartless bastard that has the blood of countless lives on his hands. He doesn't need creeps like you to carry on that black legacy, Jake shouts in anger. There's more blood on our hands than you could ever comprehend, boy. Representative smiles, having enjoyed every life he's taken in Khan's employment. He paid for those crimes. I'll make anyone who wants to walk in his footsteps share the same fate, Jake growls, balling his fists so tightly that they begin to bleed. The representative holds his arms out to the sides and allows his claws to lengthen, only to the size of typical swords. He smiles as he senses that Jake's rising anger is causing an equal fluctuation in his energy. Maybe the boy will give me a good workout after all. The kill that I have to earn is much more enjoyable, the representative smiles to himself. We must be careful. His control over the parasite seems different from the others. I think that what we are seeing counts as his transformed state, Imura cautions. Jake nods, preparing mentally to face his opponent with no reservations. The representative initiates the attack by swinging both arms from the outside in a convergent motion towards Jake. Jake leaps straight up to avoid the attack. The representative quickly elongates the claws on his right hand and brings that arm up. With the surface area needed to dodge all but eliminated, Jake is left with only the option to twist to the side and try to minimize contact. He screams in pain as the claws rake across his left thigh and shoulder. He drops to a crouch, holding his shoulder with his right hand. Blood swells around his fingers and drips steadily to the floor. I could easily kill you. All I need to do is match the width of this hallway and rotate from a fixed position in the center of the room. The representative laughs. Then you'd be cut to tiny pieces. Inwardly thankful for his opponent's overconfidence, Jake moves quickly towards him and dodges another combo of attempted slashes. Inches from him, Jake is able to nullify the representative's advantage of reach in long-range combat. The representative tries to reach Jake. First, recoil his claws in order to do so. This action costs him crucial seconds and allows Jake to land a solid right hook to the face. The representative is knocked back against the wall, indenting it on impact. Blood drools from the man's lips as he drops to the floor on his hands and knees. If only your father could have fought with this intensity, the representative laughs, still staring at the floor. Then maybe he'd still be alive. Jake freezes. A terrible realization enshrouds him. All hope for finding his father is lost in an instant. This monster is the one who took him away, who killed him. The representative glances up, smiling. He knows that he's taken away his opponent's edge. He throws an arm out, extending his claws at full speed. He screams in pain. The representative's elongated claws piercing through his shoulders and pinning him against the wall. He never even got an opportunity to embrace the GX parasite. He refused and struggled against me so much that I was forced to kill him on the spot. He was making way too much noise. I couldn't have allowed him to make that continued racket and draw the attention of the local pigs. It's a shame that he'll never have a proper burial, though. I burned his body with the batch of rejects that his coworkers all became. Not a single person from his shift was worthy of the parasite. The representative laughs, having had killed Jake's father with a similar move to the one that now immobilizes his son. It's a shame that you rejected GX. Your evolution would have been truly remarkable, given how strong you have become in such a short time. Go to hell, Jake coughs, tugging at his bindings. There's no point trying to fight me any longer. I've killed many men older and more experienced than you. Yamura, do you have enough left to take him out? Jake whispers, his spirit flickering and beginning to fade from the mind room. I do not believe that I have any other choice, Yamura sighs, Jake giving him control before he slips fully into unconsciousness. A flash of black light erupts from Jake, and he grabs the representative's claws and pulls them from his shoulders. He drops to the floor and immediately stands up, blood still oozing from his wounds. His hair now stands straight up with an oily black shine, gleaming from the ends. Tribal tattoos of an ancient demonic language cover his arms and chest. His eyes now also appear to leak a black oil. His pupils have changed to slits. His irises have turned a deep red color. I guarantee that you have never fought anyone as old as me. Yamura grins, using the black flame to cauterize the nail punctures and stop Jake's bleeding. The demon, the representative growls. I am called Yamura, and I am a Sakari, actually. The representative tenses up, recalling the hushed stories among the Sakati assassins of a resurrected full demon wreaking havoc on their forces. An ex-general of Averno, and known for his exceptional ruthlessness and high body counts. What is the matter? You were so talkative before, Yamura grins, walking closer to the representative, who takes another step backwards. I'm just wondering what kind of promotion I'll receive for killing an urban legend such as you, the representative says, slashing his elongated claws at Yamura's throat. Yamura darts forwards, ducking beneath the attack and closing the distance between the two to mere inches. The representative scrambles back, never having thought that Jake and Yamura were actually two separate entities, and that one would be watching the fight internally. Yamura was able to watch his movements and develop a strategy against him without ever having to fight him in person. Yamura slashes his own claws against the representative's chest. Deep red lines appear, followed by a geyser of crimson. The representative clutches his chest and drops to a knee. He's so powerful, the representative thinks as his face begins to pale, as the excessive blood loss takes its toll. I have a remedy to stop the bleeding for you, Yamura grins, holding his palm outwards and combusting the black flame around his hand. The representative's cells begin to heat with increased metabolic energy as the parasite within him senses his desperation. His body quivers as his cells heat and expand. A surge of energy flows through him and causes his weight to increase, forcing his body to sink into the floor several inches. He screams as his muscles stretch and increase, ripping through his clothing. His skin becomes dark green and covered in thick scales. He leans forward slightly, his waist separating and sliding outwards, giving him the posture of a praying mantis, with his torso and abdomen forming a wide L shape. His legs arch and double in thickness for support. This is the power of the GX parasite, he shouts in elation, his elongated claws transforming into sleek sabers, which are now much sharper than before. A waste of energy, Yamura says, causing his opponent to become irate. The parasite's biggest flaw, from what I have witnessed so far, is its inability to sustain the metabolic increases in energy for any prolonged period of time. You will burn through that strength, and I will claim your worthless life. The representative swings his right arm, but Yamura manages to duck beneath it while running. He tries a return pass, but Yamura dodges it as well. With a furious growl, the representative puts all effort into speed and finally connects with a back swipe that knocks Yamura against the wall. While Yamura is stunned, the representative stabs his claws straight for the Sakari's chest. Basaiya! Yamura shouts, converting his energy into a pulse that explodes on contact with the claws and diverts them slightly off course. By shouting at the release of his attack, Yamura is able to give it more strength, much in the same manner that martial artists are taught to kia, or shout while giving or taking a punch. Yamura launches himself towards his opponent as his claws stick into the wall. The representative swings his other hand, and Yamura drops prostrate to avoid it. With a large tug, the representative pulls his claws free along with a chunk of the wall. Yamura rolls to his back, then over his shoulder in time to avoid impalement by the right hand's claws. He can already feel his own energy much lower than before and knows that he must end the battle soon. His breathing has become much heavier and he sweats profusely. I criticize the parasite's endurance, yet it is I who am having difficulty in continuing this battle, Yamura thinks. Just stay sharp. He'll leave himself open for a moment, and that's all you'll need. You're the great Sakari demon Prince Yamura, Jake shouts, trying to boost his partner's confidence. Yamura nods, knowing what Jake says is true. All he needs is one tiny window, and the fight will be over. The representative whips his hand around, bringing his claws speeding back towards Yamura. As the Sakari leaps straight up to avoid the recoil, the representative thrusts his other arm out and catches him in the chest. The representative is unable to hold back his elation, uttering an excited squeal as his nails sink into Yamura's flesh and slam his back against the far wall. It took a little more effort, but you're in exactly the same position as your host was against me. The representative laughs. Am I? Yamura asks, tensing up to reveal no pain or panic in his expression. Yamura's right hand grasps the representative's nails, having allowed them to make contact just enough to sink only half an inch into his flesh. I have no interest in the transgressions you have committed. I kill you now merely because you stand between me and escaping this building with my life, Yamura says. Enough, Yamura, let's finish this and get the hell out of here, Jake interrupts. I do not understand why you do not wish for this one to suffer. I still thirst for the blood of my father's murderers. Do you not seek the same justice? As long as he's dead, what does it matter if he suffers or not? Yamura grins, enjoying the freedom given to him by Jake to kill this wretch in his place. Your time is up, Yamura says, tugging on the representative's claws hard and pulling him off balance towards him several steps. One lightning-quick slash across the jugular follows, and the representative falls back, a steady stream of crimson trailing after him. The representative lies on his back, convulsing and choking on his own blood. You were never worthy of me knowing your name, Yamura says, stepping on his chest and pressing down to inflict more pain and cause more blood to pump out through the severed artery. With a final desperate gurgle, high-pitched and filled with fear and panic, the representative is dead. Yamura sighs and relinquishes control back to Jake, needing to recover his energy once more. Jake rushes to the stairs and sprints down them as explosions and bursts of flames erupt from all around him. The exit seems so distant as Jake leaps over a burning column. The column crashes inches from Jake, and he is forced to twist to the side without breaking stride to avoid another one falling right after the last. He continues towards the door, each step bringing him closer to safety and the end of this nightmare. Coach E waits patiently at the front gate, but goes white in terror as he sees the top floors explode into flames. He hates himself for leaving, but knows that he would never have been any help against fighting the powerful parasitically enhanced warriors. Brian! Coach E screams, thinking the worst. Brian dives out of the elevator in the parking garage and breaks into a sprint as the flames nip at his heels. He returns to Coach E, Tyrell, and Raquel, just as the burning building flame collapses to the ground. Looks like you did it, Coach E says with relief. It wasn't me. Yamura got to him before me. Brian says, taking off his helmet and taking in the fresh air for the first time in hours. He slit his throat. I don't think anyone could have survived that attack. He watches the burning facility as it's swallowed by flames. I think it's probably better this way. I don't know if I could have killed him in the end myself. What happened after I left? Where's Storm? Kochi asks. Brian shrugs. He doesn't want to admit to the others that once again Storm decided to abandon them in order to focus on his obsession with saving his brother. I lost track of him after he saved me from my mother. I don't know if he survived or not. Does that mean that Deborah is dead? Raquel asks, hoping that the woman will no longer be around to troubling them. Shaking his head, Brian replies, but does not wish to dwell on the subject. She survived a fight, but as far as I know, I'm the only person who got out of that building. You know this isn't the end for us, Raquel says solemnly. Someone else will take over the company and run it from Chicago. We can't rest until the entire company is brought down. Brian nods. We still have to find the people of Clavemont. I can't abandon them. Lynn Jordan stands in front of an empty hospital bed and cries. The entire building is just like the city, deserted. Not one single human remains behind in Clavemont. Somehow Khan and his special operations team have extracted an entire town of several thousand without drawing any kind of attention. No one placed any phone calls to police in other towns, news stations, nothing. There's little evidence to even suggest a town never existed if it weren't for the hundreds of vacant buildings, some with half-eaten food still lying on plates at their dinner tables, and televisions still turned on. It's as if the biblical rapture has come and swept all of Clavemont's citizens up to heaven in an instant. Lynn, however, knows the truth. It was not a biblical rapture, but rather the reptilian mutant rapture, and his fellow GX parasite-enhanced terrorist cohorts. Lynn's nervousness is uncontrollable. She darts her eyes back and forth and constantly looks back over her shoulder as she walks down the empty halls and returns outside to her car. I saw what they did to those people. I know what they're planning for all the rest. Khan won't allow me to keep this information. I'm sure he's already sent more of his mutants to kill me. Lynn thinks. I need to get to the FBI and tell them everything. Conco is a multi-state corporation and won't fall under the jurisdiction of a single police force. And abducting an entire town has to fall under terrorist activity. I just don't know how much I can tell them without calling me insane and shipping me off to an asylum. The only reason she's lived this long, Lynn believes, is that Khan and his men were far too busy with the two high school boys, Jake and Brian. Now that has ended, she is sure that Khan will be dedicating more of his resources to cleaning up the loose ends. She knows too much to be allowed to live. Lynn touches the small needle hole on her arm and feels it crawling beneath her skin in a cold chill. She also possesses a small amount of the GX parasite inside of her, from being stabbed by Brian when he tried to escape. For the most part, however, she doesn't feel any different. There must not have been enough ejected into me for it to survive, she thinks, showing none of the initial stages of the bonding process. Lynn exits the building and sees her car up ahead. She cannot help but fearfully think the rooftops all around her are perfect sniper nests. Will that be the way? She wonders. A bullet through the orbital and into my brain? Or will they take me alive and torture me? Lynn's imagination runs wild with visions of black-clad assassins, swooping down and snatching her, putting a bag over her head and shoving her into the back of a black van. She pictures Khan himself punching her as he interrogates her about talking to the FBI. Lynn reaches her car with no indications of being followed and reaches for the door. She slides into the seat and sighs with relief as she slides the key into the ignition. She looks down to see a note on the passenger seat reading, "Gotcha," when her car suddenly explodes. Epilogue 1. "Doctor," says Candy Stripe. "What is it?" "We have a new patient," she replies. bringing in the unconscious and burned body of Lynn Jordan. Lynn's form is covered in burns. She barely clings to life. The initial exposure to the GX parasite from weeks ago is the only thing that has kept her from death. The doctor smiles, sensing potential in her. "You sensed the parasite as well, didn't you?" the doctor asks his assistant. Candy Stripe nods. "Otherwise, I'd have left that bitch in the parking lot, burning." "But she was a former Conco employee and infected with GX. I didn't think it was an opportunity that we should pass on," she adds. "You did well. Someday I am sure that you'll become the next doctor and take over for me." Candy Stripe beams with pride as she accepts her mentor's compliment. The doctor is not a man, but a tradition. The title of the doctor is passed on from one to another and has done so for centuries. The current doctor received his title after his mentor was killed by the United Nations and U.S. Navy Special Forces joint operation in Central America. Since that day his teacher was killed, he has made it his life's work to perfect the creation of Sakati warriors, and now, with the increased usage of the GX parasite by Conco, a new era of enhanced humans is beginning with him at the forefront. "Prep her for operation. We need to get the damaged tissue removed and make sure that her organs do not begin to fail," the doctor says. "And with the rumor going around that Khan himself has been killed, my position will only become that much higher as the predominant authority on creating superior, modified human soldiers." The doctor cannot contain his joy. He smiles widely, which shortly transforms into open laughter that shakes the walls of his office. Epilogue 2. Jake Stewart feels as though the past few weeks have been nothing more than a hallucination. Strange dreams have not been uncommon for the teenager since his union with the ancient Sakari general. Yamura's awareness of the events, however, signifies their reality. "We must not draw any further attention upon ourselves," Yamura cautions uncharacteristically. Typically, the Sakari is bloodthirsty and aching for battle. Jake wonders if their recent experiences have changed them both. "It was due to my sister's interference that we ever came to the attention of those mutations. It is just like Inyana to send others to do her labors. As powerful as she may be, my sister is not one to soil her own hands when she can manipulate others to do so for her." Jake questions how terrible Inyana must be for the fearless Yamura to be so obviously reluctant to meet her face to face. "We do not know how many other pawns my sister has in place against us. She is fiercely cunning and plans each of her moves several steps ahead. I fear that we must escape one trap, only unwittingly moving directly into her next awaiting snare." "Would Inyana guess our destination?" Yamura scoffs loudly, exhaling through his nose in agitation. "If those imbecile police officers were able to intercept us, of course someone of Inyana's intellect would do so also. Your relations are finite. There are only so many places for you to go to ground." Against his better judgment, Jake reveals a plan that he was saving to use in an attempt to permanently rid himself of Yamura's presence. Holding back enough of the plan, he hopes he will still succeed and reclaim his life. "Instead of going directly to my grandparents like she will expect, we should head further south and meet up with Rodnovich. He isn't the most friendly guy, but we could sure use his muscle on our side if we come to blows with your sister or more of those parasitically juiced mutants." Jake recalls the torture that Rodnovich passed off as training and shudders. "In fact, I think the two of you would become besties. You both enjoy inflicting pain and suffering on others." Again, Yamura scoffs. The notion that he would ever befriend a human irritates him. The memories that Jake has broadcast of Rodnovich in the past do lead the Sakari to believe that the man may indeed prove useful in their inevitable showdown with Inyana. Blocking his next thoughts from Yamura with careful concentration, Jake hopes that the rogue magician Adrian Scrimauer will also be present upon the revival. Much more skilled than either Elian Schaefer or Danny Livingston ever were in magic, Scrimauer is the one man alive that Jake believes could hold the key to ridding him of Yamura's spirit forever. With him gone, Inyana will have no reason to even go looking for me. I can begin to pick up the pieces of my former life and start anew. Arriving at the station, Jake boards the next bus, headed to Miami, and resumes his southward journey away from his pursuers, human and Sicarii alike. And here's a short preview of Inyana, Book 2, Vessels. Caught in the river's pull, the body of Melissa Tyndall is carried downstream several miles before being swept ashore. The girl's wet locks cling to her face like waterlogged spaghetti, and her perfect white skin is bruised and purple. Numerous small cuts and bites litter her form, having been removed by curious fish and turtles. Part of her t-shirt has been torn away after being snagged on a partially submerged limb. A shame, the rogue Yazata Cedrion says, looking upon the corpse at his feet. Wasted youth and beauty. Inyana has moved into the final phase of her revenge, adds Gadriel, Cedrion's lone subordinate. Both rogues bear the scratched-out insignia of the 8th Choir upon their once golden armor. Unable to be switched out for repairs or cleanings, the armor has dulled to a bronze color over the millennia. Even the white-blonde hair of the Yazata has darkened several shades over the years due to being so far away from their home and the source of their magical strength, the heavenly Anshar realm. The boy will not stand a chance against her. He still battles Ymura for control, while Inyana is able to completely subdue the will of her vessels. Without Ymura's full power, he will be killed with ease. Sighing, Cedrion flips Melissa's corpse over with his foot, no longer able to bear the sight of her lifeless face. We cannot have that outcome. The future of our own plans relies heavily upon that boy mastering control of Ymura and his abilities. If we interfere, our alliance with the Sicarii will be jeopardized. Should Inyana ever return to Averno, her influence will become greater than ever. None in that realm currently equal her in strength. Gadriel pictures Inyana rallying her descendants and their armies against the two Yazata in retaliation. She has shown she does not forgive betrayal, and we require her station in order to unite the 5 territories of Averno into a single military force against the humans. We cannot let her succeed, yet we cannot allow her to be killed. How can we possibly achieve our goals? We must weaken the bond of Inyana and her host enough to allow Jake to defeat her, yet not destroy her. It's not an easy task, I know. Our only course of action is to force Inyana to abandon her current host in favor of one that is significantly weaker physically and one that is able to fight back against her influence. All the while, not allowing her to realize that it's us who have undermined her, Gadriel sighs. Adrian nods before pulling out several strands of his hair and clenching them tightly in his fist. The hair glows as the Yazata rewrites the DNA contained within the follicles before placing them in the hand of the deceased teenager. We shall guide the authorities towards Inyana's host and with luck force her to abandon it in lieu of incarceration or worse, death, the elder Yazata says. Gadriel questions this plan. His bond weaker than Inyana's, Ymura was still able to overpower an entire force of police and detectives without being captured or killed. Have faith, my friend, Cedrion says, sensing the doubt in his comrade. We have waited too long for impatience to be our undoing. Following weeks of intense media coverage, the town of Rockland, Indiana begins to slowly regain a sense of normalcy. State facilities reopen despite the students of the high school having to push through crowds of overbearing reporters. While some stop to speak with the media, the majority ignore them and try to take their lives back from the tragedy. Administrators break up the interviews any time they can, attempting to control the narrative and play damage control for the school and its public image. I didn't know him very well, but I saw him around and stuff, a thin brunette sophomore tells the reporter as she chews her gum with an open mouth. He didn't seem like overly weird or anything, though I did hear he was dating one of those goth chicks. He was a loser, Brad Henson says. Everyone hated him, and it's no wonder he snapped. He looks around, noticing several classmates shaking their heads in disgust. We're all lucky we weren't massacred ourselves. He showed up at one of our parties for a big game and started a fight just a few days before he went on his killing spree. He's a psycho. I hope the feds put one right between his eyes. Jake had emotional problems. Someone should be putting him in a hospital, not chasing him around with guns like some wild animal, says Regan Teely. Did you know his father was murdered last summer? Did anyone think to give him counseling? How do you think that would affect you mentally? The muscular softball player continues, pointing her finger accusingly at the camera and raising her voice with passion. A small group of teens try to push past the reporters, who go into an immediate frenzy. Rusty Rigsby! Is it true that you saw your cousin that same night he attacked the police department? The caramel-skinned reporter for the Circle City 1 News asks. When the boy ignores her and continues walking, she turns her focus to another member of the group, refusing to admit defeat. Amy Cross. There are rumors that Jake Stewart and you were romantically linked before the murders. Can you verify that information for us? Amy holds out a middle finger, never breaking her stride. What of the disappearance of your classmate Daniela Livingston? Do you think that Jake killed her as well and her body has not yet been discovered? Or do you think it's more likely that she was an accomplice of his and has gone into hiding along with him? Victoria Campuzano asks. Stopping after having heard more than he can take, Derek angrily turns to face Victoria. I can't speak for the girl, but no matter what you media vultures say about Jake, I refuse to believe he killed anyone. Jake spent his life worrying about the safety of his friends and family. If he saw someone being picked on, he'd immediately rectify the situation. He is a good person. He isn't some deranged serial killer like you're trying to paint him as. He's not a murderer. Smelling blood in the water, Victoria presses harder. There are multiple witnesses placing him at the scenes of various homicides over a span of 3 days, including those of your own classmates, Micah Glaus and Melissa Tyndall. IMPD detectives in town investigating the murder of Lieutenant Dwayne Rollins, along with the surviving staff of the Rockland Police Department, all positively identified Stewart as the killer. Derek is caught off guard. He's heard all of the allegations before, save one, the death of Melissa Tyndall. Melissa is dead? Derek whispers. Her body was discovered Saturday afternoon by a pair of fishermen along the Harrison River. I have to go, Derek stutters, running off to catch up with his brother and Amy. Victoria triumphantly turns to speak with her cameraman. Did you catch that? He knows something. Catching up with Rusty, Derek immediately repeats what he's just learned from the reporter. Did you know that Melissa was dead? Derek asks, color having left his face. Melissa? Rusty whispers. You don't mean... Derek nods. Melissa Tyndall, our cousin Brooke's daughter. The eldest of the Stewart children, Brooke's father, is over a decade older than his siblings, and thus his daughter is actually closer in age to his younger sister, Sue, than to her first cousins. Yamura was coming after us because of our relation to Jake. You don't think he got to other relatives before he even tried to come after us, do you? Rusty shakes his head with uncertainty. He attempts to show his full faith in the matter, yet the opposite comes across. It's highly likely that Yamura, while possessing Jake or one of his acolytes, hunted down multiple lines of blood of their chosen fat sacrifice. He begins to wonder even if the disappearance of his Uncle Ian, Jake's father too, is connected. We have to keep our support for Jake strong. We're among the only people in the world left that know the truth. The police or the media will never accept demonic possession as the answer. If Jake is ever found, he won't stand a chance. They'll crucify him, Rusty says. Working furiously on the investigation into the now media-hyped case of Jake Stewart, teenage delinquent and demonic cop killer, Detectives Osteen and Morris of the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department are the case files for the 100th time. Photos of burnt corpses, men with broken necks and holes to their chests. Survivor testimonies and statements from friends and family fill the 3 overflowing boxes dedicated to the matter. Melissa Tyndall, age 15, height 5'6", weight 120 pounds, freshman at Rockland High School. daughter of Brooke and Kenneth Tyndall, granddaughter of William Stewart and second cousin of Jake Stewart, and likely his latest victim. The photographs taken at the river by the medical examiner show the heartbreaking decay of youth and beauty. A bright flame put out before ever truly catching. Dark bruises cover her throat, showing signs of strangulation. But upon further examination, it was revealed that her neck was crushed by a great force. The bruising pattern is difficult to decipher. After suffering bloating and wildlife interference, due to the time spent in the river, it appears to the investigators that a single hand was used to crush her throat, with the hand size being smaller than typical of a full-grown male needed to produce that much strength. So Stewart killed his cousin and dumped her body in the river. I'd say that's the obvious part, Detective Morris says, staring at the photographs of Tyndall's neck from various angles. He has the strength, the history, and the motive. Detective Osteen looks up from the medical examiner's report. What motive is that? Stewart has to have been hiding with relatives to have dropped off the radar so quickly and completely. Tyndall likely knew where he was held up and threatened to go to the authorities with the information. So you're saying... Detective Morris smiles. We finally have a lead on this son of a bitch. Pack your swim trunks. We're headed to the Sunshine State.